Lisa, thank you so much for joining SheLeads today. I am just so excited to get to hear your story and just learn more from you. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Lisa, you are the founder, president, and editor-in-chief at POPSUGAR. So first of all, I don't even know if I need to explain what POPSUGAR is just because it's such a well-known brand and all of my friends I know are very involved in reading what's happening on POPSUGAR. But it is one of the most successful media companies that reaches hundreds of millions of readers each month, mainly for females, but it does deliver such inspiring, informative, entertaining content in so many different industries, whether that's food, fitness, beauty, entertainment, whatever it may be. So really excited to hear more about that story. And you're also the author of your own book, Power Your Happy. So work hard, play nice, and build your dream life. And yeah, I'm just so excited to get started. So first, Lisa, take me back to when you were my age, 22 years old. You were just graduating from GW in psychology and English. So at this moment, how were you navigating your career? What did you see yourself being, and what questions were you asking yourself?
That is a great question. I really did not know what I wanted to do when I went to school.
Yeah.
I think I took things from my past that had affected me in my life over the years and thought there were things I wanted to do, but ultimately I did not know yet.
Okay.
So I actually was, tested for learning differences at a young age. So I decided psychology would have been a really cool path to go on. I was always interested in how people think about certain things. I loved giving advice. I liked the whole process of the test that I had to take to see how my brain worked. So I kind of went down that route thinking maybe that's how I wanted to continue on. But, at the same time, I really was also just a pop culture junkie. I loved entertainment. I loved movies. I read books like crazy. And I, at the time, didn't think that I actually could even have a profession and I could grow up and do those things. My dad is a lawyer. I grew up in DC where it's doctors, lawyers, politicians, and those were kind of the tracks that
Right.
I grew up thinking that I had to follow. So when I went to GW, I did continue with psychology. I definitely thought I was going to go back to grad school. That was what I thought I was supposed to do, was keep getting continued further education. And along the way, I met my wonderful husband in college, and he is totally an entrepreneur. He dropped out. He has started companies left and right. And I think being around that kind of energy helps you realize that you follow your dreams in a different way.
Yeah.
So when Brian was in New York, I would go up in the summer, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get an internship at a live morning show for a network called FX, and it was called Fox After Breakfast. And that whole summer was just totally eye-opening to me, and watching a live show come to life from every facet. And they were really awesome with the interns. They really let us, sit and see the live reads every day. I was on the PR end, and I will tell you, I came out of that job and I realized I do not want to go into PR. It's really hard to ask people to cover things for free. So when I then graduated a year later, I knew I wanted to get back into entertainment at that point. I knew I was going to move to New York, but I didn't know how or what that meant. So I was interviewing at talent agencies, and I was interviewing at ad agencies. And ultimately, I went into the ad agency world. I felt very comfortable there. I was hired by a team of 4 women who were very comforting and very welcoming. And that just seemed like really great energy and a great place for me to start. And I knew wherever I was going to start, I was going to have to just keep trying things anyways. And I knew that I just had to learn. So, and I basically just had to get a job. Like, mom and dad weren't paying bills anymore. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing education, and it was time. I was on my own. So, I went into advertising, and I really enjoyed it. But within a couple of years, I knew this is not a long-term career path for me. It isn't enough in the pop culture world. I'm not creating things. I didn't feel like it was creative enough, or sometimes you'd be on a client that was like boring and just didn't talk to me at all. So ultimately, while I was at my job in advertising, and we had actually moved from New York to San Francisco, and I was in this really creative agency and shop that I loved working at. I started writing POPSUGAR, and it was at the time when I knew I wanted to create content, but I didn't necessarily know how to start. And all the magazines and opportunities in San Francisco were very local or very tech driven. Yeah. And I'm not a techie person, I think it's like great to be in this mecca of Silicon Valley, but it's not, I'm not a tech background type of person. My husband's an engineer. He's a combination of amazing things. So I'm around it enough to understand it, but it's not what drives me.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I had a friend who gave me like a nice nudge and basically was like, you just have to start writing. And that was it. And that was true. Like, I really just needed to get up every day and start writing whatever was in my brain. And at that point, I thought it was kind of silly that I knew all this, what I thought was useless information, but things about shows I wanted to recommend or exciting new products that I found before anyone else. And then ultimately I was able to really find things before other people and share it. And so POPSUGAR grew really quickly that first year.
Wow. So that's amazing. Such a cool story. So at that moment when you were kind of graduating, going into advertising, still have this really great passion for pop culture, were your parents kind of telling you, no, like you need to take this conventional path, or were they or did they believe in you and did they kind of trust you that you were going to make a living out of it? Like, did you have people? Yeah.
They were very encouraging. My dad always said, figure out what it is that you love and make that your everyday. And, again, and I worked in advertising for a while. I was there for 7-8 years. So it wasn't just a year here or there.
Yeah.
It was, a year in New York, I actually went over to Showtime Networks, which was still in advertising, but it was on the client side. So I got to see both ends and it was more entertainment related. So I felt closer to where I knew I wanted to ultimately be.
Yeah.
But when I moved out to San Francisco, that's when, after a few years, I was like, it's also not a great environment really to have a family and raise kids. And that was always something I knew I wanted to do. So as I started to get to my late 20s, it was like, okay, let's figure out and reassess life.
Yeah.
And actually, going back to figuring things out along the way, I tore my ACL when I was playing soccer in high school. And I had never gotten the real recovery to repair it.
Yeah.
I had to get just orthoscopic at the time when I was 15. So when I was 27, I was like, I'm fully torn now. I need to get this done. So I was in advertising. I took the break to redo my knee. And it was kind of coming back from that when I went back into advertising that I was like, no, this is not what I want. I'm really going to reassess. And I think those life moments also do matter too. So so that's actually when I started POPSUGAR. So it was late 20s.
Awesome.
And then, so everyone was really supportive along the way at that point too, because I had been working really hard at great jobs that I didn't love.
Yeah.
But, for a long enough time to be able to say it's time for a change.
Yeah. So when you were starting POPSUGAR, you mentioned how you were in SF and it's not really this culture vibe where it's about media. It's more so tech and all of that. Did you consider relocating or starting in New York or LA? These like more famously known for entertainment?
Sure. Yeah, no, a lot of people questioned how we could start POPSUGAR in San Francisco. And I think that's the beauty of San Francisco is it is a city that you can just create and it doesn't necessarily matter where you are. I think now more than ever, it also shows you could be anywhere and work from anywhere. We definitely, our entire company is working from home right now. And to be able to pivot to this work from home, it was so, I don't want to say it was so easy, but it's pretty easy. Our team can work from anywhere, most of us. So while, yes, the media world is really based in New York and the entertainment world is really based in LA, by all means, you can report and write about a lot of it from here.
Yeah.
Once it came point to like really getting early access or actually having access to talent, we needed to make sure we were in those cities also. But that was what was so great because at that point we had actually expanded and had offices in all these cities. So when it was me alone in the beginning, just really building up the audience, that was more about the voice and getting people to resonate with me talking to them as if they're my girlfriend. I'm just telling them about something I'm really excited about that I want them to know.
Yeah, definitely. So take me through that first year because it seems like everything just skyrocketed. Things were going so quickly. I know your husband helped a lot in this early stage and even today and throughout it. But walk me through this process. You mentally, like, how are you dealing with this new project that you've just started and it's really getting traction?
So I started it in March of '05, and at the time I was still working in advertising. So I would write a story before I went to work. I would write something during my lunch break. I would write something like in the afternoon in between jobs. And then when I got back home, I would just like sit and write. So, and every day varied a little bit, like how much I was actually posting in the beginning. And then about 6 months in, I decided, okay, this is gaining traction. My husband built the site, so Brian built it and taught me, basic code, how to upload images, how to create a poll, and then I would say, oh, I want to do this feature now. Can you build that for me? And so he would help build, whatever it was we wanted to create. And in November, I was pregnant with my first daughter, and at that point, the site was taking off so much that I decided to leave my job in advertising and go all in. And it was the type of thing where I was so passionate about what I was doing, and I was so happy, and it was such a great outlet for me. And to be able to get that instant reinforcement back from the audience and the community just fueled me to keep going.
Yeah, incredible. So I know POPSUGAR I think its audience is mainly females. So I'm just wondering, in this early stages, when you're getting funding and just pitching POPSUGAR, did people have hesitations that it is so female focused, or was that never really an issue and you were just like, no, it has to be?
No, I think that people saw that it was growing so quickly, and there was a space in the market for digital media, and a place, where women could go to every day across all categories was something that they believed in that story, which was great. And I think they saw the passion that Brian and I had in wanting to recreate this place and space for content online. I mean, it was early enough where, it was before really social media where people could do it individually, and that was actually a big part of it too. A lot of people are like, why the name POPSUGAR? Why not, Lisa Sugar or something? There were a lot of other sites at the time that were around just one person. And I always had the vision that this was not going to be just about me. And I wanted it to go well beyond me and my stories and my point of view, and be able to include lots of people and lots of backgrounds. And so that's something that was really important to us very early on. And so I think that it was easy for people to see our dream, then getting them to believe in the vision to come to life was awesome that we had that support from investors.
Yeah. So just based off of that answer, I am wondering, you mentioned how you had this vision for POPSUGAR early on. Is this something that you're very transparent about with new employees that come into POPSUGAR, or is it something that you're like really only you and Brian are like, this is what I see for POPSUGAR?
Yeah, no, we have awesome training when people come on board. I meet with everybody and I tell them the origin story, and I take them through sort of our 10-year journey and the original vision and how we've changed over the years as we've added in elements like video and a subscription box and licensing and all the events that we do now. So we talk about the iteration of the brand and how it has changed and adapt. And I mean, if we haven't made those changes, we wouldn't be around anymore. If we were just a simple, straight up media company, we wouldn't have weathered the multiple recessions and storms and worlds that we've been living in for the past almost basically 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's been great to be able to do new things too.
Yeah. So as POPSUGAR has grown so much through these years, it's obviously you've included different categories that you're writing about, and I know you're the editor-in-chief, but your passion for writing, obviously, you've had to kind of sit back a bit with how much you're writing for POPSUGAR. Yeah. So how has that been, where you've almost had to be this leadership role, overseeing everyone, rather than actually being the one writing?
Yeah, I get asked a lot, what was one of the biggest challenges for me when I was growing the company? And it was, essentially giving up writing. Yeah. I don't write anymore. I love talking to the teams. I love brainstorming with the teams, but on a day-to-day basis, there is just no time for me to do that. So I definitely miss it. And it goes in waves. There's definitely times where I'm I wish I could just sit down and write. Yeah. And I'm really fortunate to be able to do the book in 2016, because at that point we were 10 years old and I really missed writing, really, really missed it. But when we hit that, I would say probably 5-year mark, the company was getting so big and there were a lot of people and there were parts that I needed to go help out more on to continue to build it. And I had such a strong creative team. It was silly for me to still be so in it. Yeah. I still truly believe that I could and should and wish I had more time to write, because it's just I like everybody on the team doing everything. I'm one of those types of leaders. So I would even want all of our directors and senior editors who are editing a lot of people's work to still write. A lot of these folks that we've had on staff for a long time, we hired them because they were great writers. And so when you don't get their voice anymore on the site, it's kind of sad. At the same time, it gets tiring. I mean, it's a lot of stories every day. There's definitely a burnout to it. So I feel very fortunate that I've been able to take breaks and learn new things as we've done different things as a company. And I love that we've been able to have our employees who have grown up with us also do those changes. But I miss it. And it was really great to go back and do the book in 2016, because I really got to dive into a really meaty writing project. And that was really gratifying to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I have so many questions I can take from this, but you mentioned how there's a big burnout aspect to media companies and writing. And it's true. It's all, you really can't take a break, a mental break, physical break, anything, because you just, that's the part of it. So how do you ensure that your employees are staying motivated, do want to continue writing every single day and searching for the next big story? What do you do to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. One is finding that talent who is, you can tell when you interview them, they just have it in them. It just pours out of them. So finding the talent that's just very eager to do it. And then finding signs along the way of when they're starting to get tired or need a break. And it's encouraging PTO. It's encouraging people to know they need to take those breaks. It's encouraging, incentive programs. So really rewarding people, doing bonuses whenever you can, to show people what a wonderful job they've done and let them know why that story was so special in particular from the hundreds of other ones they've written. You don't want to always make one seem so much better than the other, but if there's one that's really special, or a lot of work went into it and it pays off, really being able to reinforce how wonderful that was so that they feel really great about their work. There's lots of ways that we try to and then even just mixing the teams up. We have a lot of people also over time who've switched categories. So we have fashion writers who become moms and want to write about parenting. We have people who were on the food team that want to write about fashion. If you're with a company for 5-10 years, which we have a handful of employees who've been with us that long, more than a handful, we have a lot. You're watching them grow up and your interests change. So being able to have people to be able to move around within the company is also really important. I think a way for people to be able to stay really stimulated with what they're writing about.
Yeah, I also think that's such an incredible value you've instilled in POPSUGAR for the employees to know that, okay, when I become a mom, I'm going to have these new insights. I'm going to want to contribute to this community, and you allow them to have that freedom, that creative freedom. So I think that's great. So I can't skip over the fact that you said you had your first daughter in the early stages of POPSUGAR, and I read that you took her into work for the first 3 years of her life. So I want you to talk a little bit about, I know you like the term work-life blend rather than work-life balance. So tell me a little bit about that idea.
Yeah, I think for Brian and I, we were so lucky to be able to be building the company at the same time we were starting our family. So, in a lot of days, we didn't know what we were doing, or we didn't know what rules we were supposed to be following. We just made shit up as we went along. And, that meant in the beginning taking our daughter to work with us. And then it also meant making sure that people knew how important our family was to us. I used to say I was really worried about, a 22-year-old who just graduated college being around a 3-month-old baby or a 6-month, they probably don't want that, right? But it was such a great environment and people loved taking those breaks. So again, we're in the grind, we're writing all these stories, and all of a sudden Katie would wake up from her nap and she would come out and play, and we would take a break. And I think that is just one of those brain breaks that was great for the team too. And it was very family oriented. So everybody, again, we've had a lot of employees for 5-10 years. So we've watched them get married. We watched them buy their first homes, have babies, come back from leave. So being able to encourage also that, your needs change, and even my beliefs on maternity leave from when I started the company to what I believe now, right? I highly encourage people to take those breaks where I kind of didn't in the beginning because we were starting the company and I didn't know if I would need or want that time. But it was really exciting. And it was definitely, once we got a little too big, it's really hard. Obviously people can't bring their babies into the office. It would be a whole other insurance liability with daycare. But it is something that I felt very grateful that we could do. And I think it actually helped shaped Katie and Juliet came in the beginning into who they are, and to being able to speak to adults really well because they've been around them their whole lives. And it was a really fun perk, and I think it did help shape the company and the culture that we created.
Yeah, I love it. It's amazing. So what advice would you give other female entrepreneurs who just like having this passion and really getting that drive to get started, like taking that first step, as well as also the idea of, okay, we have to plan our lives where we want to have a kid, we want to start a family, but we also want to start this project that could take many hours of our day. So how do you navigate? Yeah, what advice would you give?
I mean, I would say the first advice is what you did, right? Just reach out to people. Like, you never know. If you don't reach out, you never know if you're going to hear something back. And I'll be honest, I get reached out to a lot and I don't always get to reply. So sometimes it's also just the right time. So I would say, like, if you don't hear anything initially, like, don't be overly persistent, but it doesn't hurt to try again.
Right.
Sometimes it's just the inbox was too big that day, or sometimes it was like, you got me, right?
Yeah.
So you got to just start. You got to start reaching out and doing what it is. That's whatever it is. So I even say, for if you wanted to be in the food world or a nutritionist or a fitness expert, it's like really just, especially nowadays, like just start putting your routines online. Like, you never know who's going to find them and want to help, bring you to their platform. So I think that that's something that's really unique that didn't exist even 10 years ago, really. Like, but like starting those YouTube channels and really that, so reaching out to people, asking for advice is always something. I will say, I don't love when people are like, can we go have coffee? Like, to me, that's not something that I can factor into my day. Yeah. But something like this, having a conversation, knowing that you want to help other people, you're trying to learn yourself, but you also are thinking beyond you, is something that I think that resonates with female founders wanting to help other people.
I agree. I think it's definitely this mindset where you can almost train your mind where just reach out. Worst case, they don't reply. You get a no. Like, it's not the end of the world, And it's been so amazing reaching out to these incredible females like yourself. And yeah, the fact that I got a reply and I'm talking to you, like, it's great. So I agree. I think it's definitely important. So tell me about your book. And I know I'm excited to read it, but tell me a little bit, like, main lessons that you have for anyone reading it and just your desire to put it all in paper.
So we did the book in 2016, which was the 10-year anniversary of POPSUGAR. So at that point, I felt like I was seasoned enough to really give advice on how to start a company, how to have work-life balance or blends.
Yeah.
And also knowing when to just throw it all out and be like, it doesn't have to be so balanced. It doesn't have to be so planned. Kind of combining it with your last question, it's like, if you try to overly plan what age you're going to have a kid, like when you're going to launch the company, when it's never going to work. Things like the world we're living in today, no one would have ever even predicted. So you got to just do things because you don't know what tomorrow may bring. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have your motto that you've instilled into, so tell me a little bit about the motto.
So for me, when it was writing the book, it was like thinking back of 10 years, looking at the people that have grown up with us, how we've shaped it. And I always just grew up where it was like, I worked really hard. And I sometimes feel like I probably worked twice as hard. Like, I had learning differences. I was not a straight A student without trying. I worked really, really hard. Yeah. And I think, again, a lot of it comes back to sports. I talk a lot about like finding your ultimate team, and it's not necessarily in that competitive nature, but in that, who do you want to surround yourself with? What qualities you want? Who can you pass the ball with? Because the two of you together can score, right? And I think that it's really important to find your ultimate team folks. Like, I'm somebody that, like, sure, I understand the finances of our business, but that's not where I want to like geek out and go deep. But I have people on the team that love that, and they live and breathe that. So finding that person who's smarter than me in that world is going to help me make sure we don't go out of business. And that's a really important person we need, right? So there's that balance of, like, in the book, advice like that, figuring out, how to get started, how to find your teammates. And then ultimately I say this: work hard, play nice. And it's really, I believe in that good sportsmanship when you're playing. And along the way with POPSUGAR, there were a lot of companies that were doing nasty things. They would claim false things. They would just do bad stuff. And I always felt like karma would get them. And I always felt like it was really important to collaborate with competitors versus just try to beat the competitor, And I think that that's actually another reason and way that POPSUGAR has been able to be so successful all these years.
Yeah. I think there are so many lessons in that, and just even the team aspect, and it goes very much with hiring people. I've talked to other guests, and they say definitely like hire people who you want to learn from and who are smarter than you in that, because you don't have to be the smartest in everything. So I think that's definitely a valuable lesson. So before we wrap up, I do want to ask you 2 fun questions. So first, what's a passion or hobby that you have that's just completely unrelated to your work?
No, it's so good. I feel like it's so hard for me to just like have hobbies these days. I'm like really just trying to find the sun so that I can stay home and happy. I do love reading, and I really, really miss it. I would say these days probably more cooking. Brian's like an awesome chef, and so we've been like making pizza and things that like we've never done before. So cool. But yeah, I'm really bad on like having separate hobbies. I think when you start to have kids, you realize you kind of take on, like, I'm definitely the number 1 soccer mom on the sideline. I can tell you that as the hobby. So I definitely am missing games right now. Yeah.
I love it. What's your favorite book? All-time book?
All-time favorite. I mean, I love Valley of the Dolls as like a super classic, but as far as a recent one, Daisy Jones and the Six is one of my favorite books.
Okay.
If you haven't read it, her name's Taylor Jenkin Reid, the author, and she has another really great book called The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which was in our must-have box, and her writing is just awesome. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Okay, so last question. What is a fun or weird talent that you have that no one else really knows about? So
my husband, yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna go first.
Oh wow, okay.
So I'm good at blueberry throwing and catching. All right.
Nice.
So here's a little demo. All right, here we go. There we go.
There you go. Well done. Did you have to practice before, or you just know you're going to nail it every time?
I've practiced for years with this.
That's awesome. Yeah. I feel like that's like cherry, like when people do the tie with the cherry in their mouth too.
Yeah.
To say my husband likes that I can rap Eminem, but I don't think I'm going to do that for you. And there's a band called The Far Side that like I used to just constantly. So yeah, I have some rapping.
All right, I like it. So no preview? Are you sure no little preview?
No, I think I'll spare you that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Lisa, it's been so fun, and I've learned so much. So really, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing all your insights in founding POPSUGAR and so much more. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Good luck to you. Congratulations on graduating.
Thank you.